Hi, my name is Dalton Samancic, and I'm a second-year MSI student studying information analysis and retrieval. And I use information and technology to push boundaries on how we share and tell stories. And I do this out of an interest that started in high school. Um, I had a great interest in the hero's journey. And I enjoyed this because what the hero's journey is it's kind of this recognition that there are reoccurring patterns and archetypes that show up again and again across different stories and myths from cultures all across the world in different times and different places. And what this suggests is that story has some underlying purpose to the human experience that is universal to all human experience, regardless of the culture that is showing up, because you have these reoccurring patterns of challenges being overcome or mentors helping the hero out that show up again and again, which suggests that there's a deeper purpose to be pursued. And so that question of finding out what that purpose of story is has driven me ever since. So I was an English major, and I did go to literature and film to understand what I could about story just from pure studying of the object of the story itself. But in addition to that, I decided to do some field experience. So knowing that, thinking of some of the best masters of storytelling that I could, I decided to go work at Disney World for 6 months. So I dropped out of college to become a janitor at the Magic Kingdom for 6 months. And during my time there, I not only went to learn more about just the stories that Disney told, the animation classics that everyone's familiar with, but also to learn about the people and the workers that came to Disney World, to understand what brings them to this place, what attracts them to these stories, and kind of the storytelling that Disney does, and how Disney does that well. To see what that underlying purpose that these stories are fulfilling for the guests of the theme parks, the viewers of the movies, and the workers that help make those parks and movies happen. And so I immediately, out of this experience, appreciated that stories were something much more than just a book or a movie. Stories are a part of a more complex system that involves people and interactions. This interplay between what the story does to a person viewing it and watching it, and what that larger interaction is between the storyteller, the story, and the audience themselves. So from there, I wanted to explore that further and see what other dimensions of story there were beyond just what the actual object was, and what the potential was for understanding story's purpose then, now, and in the future. So I went into all kinds of disciplines: computer science, animation, video games, virtual reality, design, medicine, and really tried to see what this larger complex system of stories is, and how that kind of universal purpose, that underlying science of what story does, kind of manifests in all these different contexts, with the hope that I can understand stories as a much more significant power than just an object of entertainment. So, as a documentary filmmaker in undergrad, this took me to one of my first jobs, where I was working as a research assistant in a health system. I wrote this grant to work with patients with newborn screening disorders and capturing their stories on film as mini documentaries to use as educational resources for other families with these disorders, or healthcare providers treating these patients with these disorders, and seeing what resources I could create with this kind of acute understanding of narrative and its role or potential purpose in a very different context other than entertainment. So in this case, using patient stories as an educational tool in healthcare. And what I found was that creating documentary films in this context and updating them and maintaining them is a very worthwhile but demanding task. And as I became more aware of emerging fields such as UX design and data science, I realized that there were potentially new technologies and informational tools that could serve the same purpose, or help us to understand the purpose of story better, instead of just creating a documentary tool. So this led me to step away from documentary film and what I was doing in this grant, in this health project, to kind of look towards these new and emerging fields to see what kind of information and resources I could produce with those. So as I came to the School of Information, I kind of took what I had learned in the real world and kind of developed this skill set of forwarding narratology, my understanding of storytelling, but also kind of building this foundation in UX design and data science, a larger understanding of complex system, to think about things like using natural language processing to generate dialogue for a virtual reality environment, or what kinds of data mining techniques and data resources could be used to tell us what kind of stories and technologies we should be pursuing, and not just understanding the new tools of technology like virtual reality, but maybe understanding what stories we should be telling or what stories deserve more attention based on the data that we can collect from social media and beyond. There's a cool project out there right now that makes these kind of virtual reality documentaries to represent real-world situations for us to enter. So for example, war-torn Syria, where we can walk the streets of a battle in session, or kind of a fight in play, and kind of go immersing ourselves in that experience and having the story adjust to our actions in the virtual environment for various purposes of engaging in the empathy of the situation with all those involved in Syria. And so, again, embracing new technologies and data and new ways of storytelling to come up with stories that have been told in a way that they've never been told before. And so it gets at the same idea that stories are not just about entertainment, that they are, there is an underlying purpose with what a story should do. And these new and emerging fields such as data science, UX design, I think hold the potential for the kinds of stories that we can tell in the future. Not just stories with new technologies that are meant to inspire us with VR or really great CGI, but stories that are contextually aware of what their purpose is and what meaning they hold in the world with the kind of impact that they're going to create. And it's my intention to develop those skills that I've brought to this, including my understanding of storytelling, UX design, data science, to push those skill sets to the limit so that I can help tell those new and more aware stories of tomorrow.